Our final speaker is Cheryl Jones, an attorney with PK Law. Cheryl is a member of the firm's Wealth Preservation Group. She represents individuals and families, business owners, healthcare facilities, corporate executives, foundations, and other nonprofit entities in matters relating to estate planning, asset protection, and elder law, including asset transfer strategies. Her practice includes advising LGBT clients on estate and family planning matters, including second parent adoption proceedings. Cheryl presents frequently on the subject we are discussing today, planning for Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care. Thank you, Cheryl. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you everyone for spending the afternoon with us. I hope you've learned a lot so far. I know you've talked about basic estate planning. You've talked about what to do after you die in the context of probate and opening an estate. You've also heard about life insurance and how that can help. I'm going to talk with you now about another situation, your disability, incapacity, or entry into an assisted living or a nursing home, and how to navigate Medicare, Medicaid, and paying for all of those long-term care situations. I have a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm about to pop up. So let's get started because there's lots to talk about. How to navigate Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care. The first thing I want to point out to everyone is these are different things, and people get confused about the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Just a quick reminder, Medicare is health insurance. We're all eligible for it when we reach a certain age and qualify. Medicaid is the nickname for medical assistance. It's another government program, but you have to be in a nursing home and you have to qualify financially and medically for it. So just keep in mind, Medicare and Medicaid, different things. So what are your long-term care options? You become disabled, you can't live at home anymore, you develop Alzheimer's or ALS or some other debilitating illness that requires you to receive long-term care. The first thing, of course, is to have someone come into your home. You bring a healthcare provider in. You may use them for 3 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 24 hours a day. What's the problem with home healthcare? First, you have to be willing to have people come into your home. Second, it's terribly expensive. The average hourly cost for home healthcare runs about $23 an hour. Sometimes it's up as much as $26 or $27 an hour. It depends on what you need, your geographic location, what hours you need them, all sorts of factors. If you add that up because you need 24/7 care, you could be looking at $17,000, $18,000, even $19,000 a month of home health care expenses. That's a lot of money, but that's option number one. Option number two, you move into an adult daycare facility. Those have popped up a lot over the years. Essentially, just like daycare when you have a small child and you need to work, the daycare option for adults allows you to place mom or dad or your spouse who needs care into a daycare facility. They'll often come and pick up your loved one, keep them for the day, feed them. They have social workers on staff who can help. There's enrichment activities, and then they'll come home. It's great if you need to go to work, but it doesn't cover nights and weekends. So if you have a loved one with dementia or someone who wanders, you may still be faced with needing to bring caregivers into the home to help so that you can sleep or go grocery shopping. What's next? Well, if you can't be at home any longer and you can't go in an adult daycare center, then you're looking at the next level, which is an assisted living facility. This is the continuum of care, folks. This is when you start living at home and where you might progress over time with a debilitating illness or physical condition. An assisted living facility is one where you live there full time. There's lots of them all over town. You have typically a room that you are often allowed to decorate with your own furniture and pictures and things, but there's often not a kitchen or any type of cooking facilities in your room. Instead, there are shared communal spaces, and these activities are performed for you. So an assisted living facility, if you're not familiar with, the average cost per month typically runs between $5,000 and $8,000. If you're placing a loved one into an assisted living facility because they have dementia or advanced Alzheimer's and they're a flight risk, then you may need to be in a lockdown memory care unit, which is definitely at the higher end of that price point. I've even seen them go as high as $10,000 a month. Again, a lot of money. And one of the things that people don't like to think about, but I always remind you, is if you're working with your parents and mom needs to move into an assisted living, if your parents are roughly at the same age and health condition, you may be facing dad moving into an assisted living at the same time. This can be catastrophic from a financial standpoint for a lot of families. So I want you to understand what your options are and know by the end of this presentation that you do actually have ways to try to mitigate some of these costs. So stay at home as long as you can. Adult daycare, if you can use that. An assisted living facility. What happens when you need more care than the assisted living can provide? You know, assisted living is not a nursing home. It's a step below. So realistically, you may need a higher level of care. Perhaps you have open wounds that need to be maintained. Perhaps you need ongoing medication management or some other care that the assisted living facility can't provide. At that point, they will approach you and say, mom or dad needs a higher level of care. They need to go into a nursing home. Sometimes you go directly into a nursing home. When does that most often happen? After a fall, after a catastrophic or traumatic injury to a parent. So they fall, they go in for rehabilitation, which is usually in a nursing home, but inpatient rehab. And then at that point, sometimes the assessment is made that mom or dad can't go home and they stay in the nursing home. People hate the words nursing home. It's a scary place. No one ever wants to be in them. And everyone always says to me, I'm not putting my husband, my wife, my parents into a nursing home. And I hope you never have to. However, sometimes you can't provide the level of care that they need anywhere else. If your mom or dad is bedbound, do you have the ability to physically lift them, to move them from room to room, to change them, to bathe them? Can you work a Hoyer lift in your home? Those are really serious considerations. And if any of you has ever acted as a caregiver, you know that it is a 24/7 job. And so there's this plight of caregivers. They're sort of the unsung, invisible workers in home health care because it could drain a caregiver unbelievably to provide for mom and dad. So sometimes nursing home care is the last resort. The other thing I always hear is, I don't want to think about Medicaid because mom or dad will go into the nastiest nursing home in town. I don't want them to go into a Medicaid nursing home. The truth of the matter is that if your parents qualify for Medicaid, virtually all of the nursing homes in the state of Maryland accept Medicaid. The good ones, the not so good ones, but almost every one of them does. So there are good options out there for a Medicaid nursing home. So what about continuing care retirement communities? You know what those are? Those are those big sprawling complexes that we see all over town. Charlestown, Oak Crest, the big one in Montgomery County that I always space out on and forget. But they're everywhere. They provide all of these levels of care, right? You can walk in and get an apartment and be in independent living. As your needs rise, you can move into an assisted living. And finally, you can move into a nursing home. They're wonderful opportunities. you typically, in almost every instance, have to be able to enter at the independent living phase. And that's because if you think about it, they're holding their assisted living and nursing home beds for the people who are already there in independent living. So they don't want to open those to the public. And then when I've been living in my own apartment there and paying rent for 6 years, tell me, oh, sorry, Cheryl, there's no room in our assisted living facility for you. So typically you have to be able to walk in assisted living. They're heavily regulated in the sense that they all have extremely complex resident agreements, and the payment plans are different at all different types of CCRCs. They have different arrangements. So if it's something you're considering for yourself down the road or for your parents, I would encourage you to become familiar with the different types, understand how payments will work, understand what happens if you run out of money in a CCRC. Yes, they all say, you'll stay here forever, we won't kick you out. I have never seen a contract that says, we are a charity, and if you run out of money, we will keep you here forever. So be aware of the rights that you have in a continuing care retirement community and what your obligations are. So those are your long-term care options. As we age, we hopefully live at home as long as we can, but if we need care, there's a whole continuum of places where you can receive care. All right. So now you know what your options are. How are you going to pay for them? Well, a few quick statistics first. And I've put these up here because I like to dispel some of the myths. Many people say, I'm never going to get Medicaid. I'll pay for it myself. Well, first bold statistic, Medicaid is the primary payer source for most nursing facility residents nationwide. What's that mean? Most of the people in a nursing home are getting their care paid for by Medicaid. Most people don't privately pay because let's face it, folks, when you're in your 70s, 80s, retired, most of us don't have $10, $12, $14,000 worth of income coming in each month to pay for that facility. What's the next really important thing I want you to know? The majority of nursing home residents are Medicaid beneficiaries. So first, Medicaid is paying for most certified nursing facilities nationwide, and the majority of people in there are getting getting their benefits paid by Medicaid. And finally, in Maryland, Medicaid residents make up about 61% of all nursing home residents. So some people have a really guttural reaction when they hear about Medicaid. It's cheating. You're not supposed to do that. Medicaid planning is about qualifying you for Medicaid to pay for your nursing home sooner so as to preserve assets. Okay? So, but this is not just about Medicaid. This is about Medicare. I'm just planting the seeds for the complicated Medicaid conversation coming up. So, how do you pay for long-term care? Does Medicare pay for the nursing home? The answer is, it depends. Medicare will pay for the nursing home in some circumstances, not all. It is a limited payment at best, okay? So do not rely on Medicare. It's not going to pay for your entire stay. It is health insurance. And if you think about what the payment in a nursing home is, it's not ongoing health care. It's residence care. It's room and board, food, and all those things. That's not what health insurance covers. Medicare will pay up to 100 days in a nursing home. In a nursing home. Not necessarily in an assisted living, not for home health care. Those are different things. But in a nursing home, if you have been discharged to the nursing home after a qualifying hospital stay of 3 days or more, and you need skilled nursing care, then Medicare will pay the first 20 days in full, okay? And then there's a sliding scale. So that's option number one. The way I like to tell people that it works is Medicare gives you a window of time to get your bearings, to make sure mom and dad are situated in the nursing home, and then figure out your plan going forward, okay? What's the next way to pay after Medicare? Well, if you have long-term care insurance, this is when you start tapping it. Do not save your long-term care insurance for a rainy day. Entry into the assisted living facility or the nursing home is the rainy day. Too often, I see clients come in, they've saved that long-term care, they've had stays in and out of facilities for years, they've drained the bank account. They come in to see me, I say, tap the long-term care policy, that's what it's for. And then mom or dad dies. They've spent huge chunks of money, they've never used the benefit that they've paid for all these years under the long-term care insurance. If you have long-term care insurance, make sure you understand what it does. Make sure you understand when it pays and what it covers. Talk to the person who sold it to you. If not, there are good independent brokers out there that can talk to you about your policy, tell you whether it's a good one, not a good one, whether you should keep it, adjust it, whatever. If you're working with your parents, talk with them about their policies. Understand what they are. Most people get long-term care insurance between about 50 and 60. Best place to get it through your employer, because usually it's a group plan and the premiums are a little bit lower, but it's not cheap. Like all insurance, you're hedging against the risk that you might wind up in a nursing home or an assisted living for an extended period of time. I don't sell it. I can't tell you anything about it. I've looked at a gazillion policies, but at the end of the day, it's a very personal decision as to whether you want it. So Medicare covers some days. If you're lucky and you have long-term care insurance, they'll cover for whatever the benefits period is under that policy. Then what? What happens if you don't have a policy or your benefits have run out? You write a check. You self-pay. You are now responsible for the costs of your own care. That means your income that comes in each month, you use it to cover the assisted living, the nursing home, the home health care providers. If your income is insufficient, and again, most people don't have $6,000 to $15,000 worth of income each month, then you're using your resources, the pools of money and assets that you've accumulated. Savings accounts, CDs, retirement accounts, perhaps you're selling assets. This is where the rubber hits the road for a lot of families, and they sit down and they make an assessment and go, wow, we don't have enough to cover Dad's extended stay because mom's going to be destitute if we drain all the money. The last way to pay for long-term care is Medicaid, medical assistance, a government program. It's a federal and state joint combined program, and it pays for long-term care in a nursing home if you qualify, okay? So what's our long-term care timeline look like? How are you navigating this now and in the future? The first phase that most of you hopefully are all in is pre-crisis phase. What's the crisis? It's the incidence that causes admission into a nursing home. It's the fall, it's the massive stroke, it's the onset of dementia to a level that you can't stay at home anymore. So we're all in pre-crisis phase. What should you be doing? Number one, please make a list of all of your assets and sources of income. The hardest thing for families to do when they're scrambling to get mom or dad or a spouse situated in an assisted living or a nursing home is to try to figure out what's out there. They don't have access to your accounts. Perhaps you're not very tidy about your paperwork. Perhaps you don't know what you have anymore because you've sort of lost track of it all over time. Your family members that are going to be helping need to have this information. Make a spreadsheet. Here are all my sources of income. Here's when they get deposited. Here's the contact information. Here are all of my resources, the other things available to me. I have these life insurance policies. These are the beneficiaries. This is what the death benefit is. I have these retirement accounts. They're held at these financial institutions. Here are the beneficiaries. I have these investment accounts held with this brokerage. I have savings bonds. hidden away in the bottom drawer. Make sure you list all of those things. Please don't put this in your safe deposit box, by the way. It is the hardest thing in the world to get into a safe deposit box when your name is not on the box. So if you're in the nursing home and there's nobody else's name on the box, your attorney has to go get the sheriff's office and a court order to get into that safe deposit box. They drill it, they get mad, they charge big fees. It's a mess. Don't put your list and important paperwork in a safe deposit box. Buy a fireproof box in your house and put that someplace, under the bed, in the hall closet. Let your family members know where it is. Trust me, no one's stealing your deed, okay? Identify your assets, figure out what you have. Keep it updated, okay? Do you have a car? Where's the title? If you die, someone's gonna need to find that title to that car to transfer it. If it's stashed away in a ginormous pile of papers, they're never gonna find it. What's the next thing? Get your estate planning in order. You've already heard about what basic estate planning looks like, but it's usually a will, a financial power of attorney, and advance directive. Your financial power of attorney must specifically authorize gifting of your assets in order to undertake Medicaid planning in a nursing home. Let me say that again. Your financial power of attorney has to have a clause in it that specifically authorizes the agent, the person that you're giving the power to make gifts of your assets in order for you to do Medicaid planning down the road. Because a big portion of Medicaid is giving away your assets in order to protect them. And in a financial power of attorney, you must specifically have the power to make gifts. No limits on those gifts, by the way. I don't want to see a power that says you're only limited to $15,000 per person per year. If I have $100,000 to be given away, that doesn't do me any good if I can only give $15,000 away each year, okay? So make yourself a note. Your financial power of attorney must authorize gifting. Next step, while you're in this process of just getting things organized, you're far away from the possibility of a crisis. Please consolidate and simplify your assets. If you have a timeshare that no one is using, that's just costing you money, please get rid of it. If you have 7 different CD accounts at 7 different banks scattered throughout your county, please consolidate them. The more places your kids or your family members have to look to find assets, the less likely they're going to find them all. The harder it's going to be in a crisis. I understand that clients diversify. I tell this story in every seminar. My father-in-law was an attorney, practicing attorney for decades and decades, and he passed away at 90. And I was trying to organize everything for him before he died. And he had bank accounts in so many different institutions. And I remember looking at him and saying, did you get a toaster every single time you opened up a bank account? Is that why you did this? Did you have like a secret stash of 150 toasters over the last 60 years stashed away somewhere that you sold on the black market? I didn't understand it. And in hindsight, it's a safety mechanism, right? I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. But I'm going to tell you that in a crisis, if all your eggs in one basket, you have saved your time, your family members, time, aggravation, and money chasing down stuff. So start thinking about consolidating. Get rid of nuisance assets. You have an old jalopy sitting in the driveway that nobody's driven in 10 years and you just haven't gotten around to donating it and getting rid of it. Please get rid of it, okay? Consolidate. Finally, start thinking about your housing and care needs down the road. Is your house accessible? Can you live there? Are there too many stairs? Is it a bad neighborhood? Are you too far away from help and care? Maybe you need to move closer to your kids. What are you going to look like? Start thinking about what your future might look like in a crisis and what steps you can take to sort of start planning now, right? Maybe it's time to sell that big house. Maybe it's time to buy a condo or rent an apartment, or think about moving into a continuing care retirement community. Too often people wait too long. And there comes a point when it's too hard emotionally, physically to move. There's too many things in the house. Physically, it's too hard to think about packing, and then you're stuck. And when you lose the ability to make those decisions for yourself, then you're at your family's mercy. We all like to control what happens to ourselves, so think about it now. All right? So that's pre-crisis phase. What happens if you've been admitted to a facility? You've fallen, your condition has worsened, you need to be in a facility. Well, remember what I said, Medicare, that's your health insurance if you're old enough, only pays for entry after an inpatient hospital stay of at least 3 days. Please be careful in this. You have to be an admitted patient. If you are under observation status, you are not an admitted patient. Be your own advocate, be your family members' advocates. You've got to be admitted for 3 days. Also, the date you're discharged doesn't count as one of your days. The hospitals all know this rule. Some of them keep you under observation. I had a woman who fell down the stairs, broke, a couple ribs in her arm. She was in observation status at the hospital for 9 days. They set her arm, they did x-rays, they did CTs because she hit her head. She was never formally admitted. Her family didn't know that. She was discharged to a nursing home, and they were on the hook for 100% of the cost of the nursing home care from day one. There were no Medicare days. Guess what day they came to see me? Day 100. They were on the hook for 100 full days of nursing home care because there were no Medicare days because she was never an admitted patient. Please be aware. Speak to the social workers. Talk to the hospitals and doctors. They know these rules. You have the right to know and to ask to be an admitted patient, okay? So they discharge you to a nursing home, either for rehab or because you can no longer live in the community at home. To qualify for Medicare to cover the days that it will cover, you've got to need to be in the nursing home. We can't just put you there because you're annoying and we don't want you at home. You actually have to need acute skilled care. So if you've been discharged after a qualifying hospital stay and you need skilled nursing care, Medicare will pay 100% of the first 20 days. Remember, that's the grace period for the family to run around and figure out what we're doing. Oh, mom's never coming home. We need to figure out how we're going to pay for this going forward. We need to find out where she's going to be, whether we like this facility. Days 21 to 100, there's a copay. Okay, you see on the slide, you pay $176 a day. Well, that sounds like a lot of money. This is where your supplemental insurance comes in. Your United Healthcare through ARP or your Blue Cross Blue Shield supplemental policy. Okay. If you don't have a supplemental health insurance policy, you might want to look into that down the road. After 100 days, you're on the hook. You're paying. So think back to a few slides ago. Medicare's gone. Now who pays? Your long-term care insurance, if you have it. If you've used it up in an assisted living facility previously or you don't have it, next payer is you. You start writing that check. Trust me when I tell you the nursing homes want that check the day you come in. You pay in advance for the month, okay? So that's Medicare for a long-term care facility, okay? Phase 2, admitted and on Medicare days. All right, phase 3, you're permanently staying in the facility. The nursing home is now your permanent home. What do you do? Well, you've had your 20-day grace period, and hopefully you've remembered that. You've figured out your money. If you were organized, you've got your estate planning documents in place, including your financial power of attorney. You've made a list of all of your assets. Now your family and you are going to do a cost-benefit analysis of Medicaid. Is it worthwhile to pursue Medicaid in your situation? And this is a really important point. Every case runs on its own facts. Medicaid planning is not one size fits all. Your elder law attorney has to take into account a lot of moving parts. What's your prognosis? What's the cost of your care? How much income do you receive each month so that they can figure out if the cost of your care is $14,000 a month and you have $6,000 a month worth of income, how big is that shortfall? You're running short $8,000 a month. Are there other family members that you're supporting, like a spouse who's at home? What's the nature of your assets? If your assets consist of a house and $1 million in retirement assets, that's a different kind of a Medicaid plan than somebody who has $50,000 in the bank, a car, a house, a couple CDs. Every case runs on its facts, okay? If your prognosis is 2 or 3 months, it may not make sense to undertake Medicaid planning because it's a lot of time and effort and money. You may be better off just privately paying for those 3 months than trying to pursue a Medicaid spend down plan. That's the analysis that gets made. And unfortunately, you and I don't have crystal balls. So we don't know. So the truth of the matter is that many times Medicaid planning is doing the best you can given the facts that you know. So realistically, you're looking to be educated about what your options are, and then you're making an analysis of whether or not Medicaid spend down planning makes sense. I'm going to go back to the second bullet point. What if you're helping mom and dad and you've just learned that they've used up all their Medicare days, they're getting discharged to a nursing home, and there is no power of attorney in place. So you can't really do any Medicaid planning because dad's not competent. He has assets in his own name alone and nobody can manage them. If there's no power of attorney in place, if dad has never signed a power of attorney authorizing gifts, you're going to have to go to court and ask for a guardianship proceeding. You're going to have to go through the time and trouble of a guardianship proceeding to have a court appoint a guardian over your father's assets, and then you're going to have to ask the court for permission to do a Medicaid spend down. Please, power of attorney documents are probably the single most important document in the event of disability or long-term incapacity. From my presentation, there's lots to take away, but I want you to take away the idea that everybody needs a power of attorney, okay? So, permanently living at the facility, what happens now? Well, my objective is to see you qualify for Medicaid on the first attempt. Sometimes the facilities will tell you, we can help you fill out the Medicaid application. I'm going to suggest to you that before you do that, unless your parents are destitute, so mom or dad literally has nothing left in her name, you should seek counsel from an elder law attorney. And here's why. If you get the Medicaid application wrong, potentially what happens is your family member has 0 assets left and Medicaid isn't paying for them. Nursing homes are not charities. They will not keep your parent there without payment. So now you're probably looking at them attempting to discharge mom or dad or bringing suit against them, or you if you did it wrong. So we want you to qualify in the first attempt. What are the rules? To qualify for Medicaid, it is a 3-part test. You have to qualify medically. That means you have to need skilled nursing level care. You have to need assistance with your activities of daily living, feeding, bathing, dressing, toileting, and walking. If you need assistance with those activities of daily living, or you have a wound that needs skilled care, or obviously if you have advanced ALS, you qualify for skilled nursing home care. If dad's just annoying and you don't want him in your house anymore and you put him in the nursing home because it's a good place for him to be, he may not qualify medically. It's an important distinction. The nursing home will make that assessment and it will be reviewed by a state agency to determine if you meet the test medically, okay? People always ask me, but mom or dad has really bad dementia, but they're strong as a horse and they don't have any other physical ailments. If they need constant prompting to dress, bathe, feed, usually they will meet the level of care, okay? If mom's at your house and you're not sure if she meets the level of care, talk to the nursing home. They'll send a social worker out to do the assessment, and you can get that assessment submitted to Telegen, that's the state agency that reviews it, and have them tell you whether she meets a nursing level of care. Qualify medically is the first part. Qualify financially is the second part. Medicaid is the payer of last resort. They pay because you've exhausted all of your other resources. So you basically have to be poor. On the screen, you'll see, if you are single, so an unmarried applicant, you have to have less than $2,500 worth of assets when you apply in order to qualify financially, okay? They measure that as of the first day of the month for which you're seeking benefits. So if I'm applying for, this is October, November 1st Medicaid, I have to be in the facility. I have to need skilled nursing care and be in the facility, in the nursing home. And as of basically the last day, 5 o'clock on October 31st, I best make sure that my assets are below $2,500, which means if my Social Security hits on the first of the month, I'm going to be over scale. So I have to factor all that in, okay? The day that I apply, my assets. What are my assets?
Excuse me, Cheryl. I'm sorry. 10-minute warning with including time for questions.
Thank you. My assets are everything that can be spent. Cash and life insurance, my cash in the bank, everything else. What if I'm married? Well, if I'm the one going into the nursing home, my assets have to be under $2,500. My spouse's assets have to be less than either half of our combined assets or 128,640. It's the lesser of those two numbers. So they look at my assets, my spouse's assets, and our joint assets. It doesn't matter how they're titled. And they add them all up and they say, okay, Cheryl, you have $2,000 in your name. Good. Husband, you have $200,000. When you add up everything else, you're not allowed to keep 200. You're allowed to keep half, 100. That's it. If we have 600,000, he's allowed to keep half, 300, but that's capped at 128,640. He's allowed to keep 128,640. That's it. All those excess assets have to be spent down in order to qualify me. Spend them on my care, spend them on my funeral, spend them on fixing up the house. If my spouse is in the house, meet with an elder law attorney who can help you spend them down to protect them. How do you accelerate it? Just told you, pay debts, pay off the mortgage, buy a car, fix up the house. Take those excess assets, give them away. The problem is if we could all do that, we'd all give away all the extra money and qualify instantly. So Medicaid has caught on. Everything is subject to a 5-year look back. For every $9,673 that I gave away before I applied in the 60 months before I applied, Medicaid penalizes me 1 month of care. If I apply on December 1st, they look back 5 years to December 2015. And if in December 2016, I gave my kids $100,000, that is a penalty. They will not pay for 10 months of my care. If I am married, there's a wonderful spend down option. I take all those excess assets that my husband's not allowed to keep, and I buy something special called a Medicaid annuity. I can only do this for a married couple, but we take all the assets, we buy an annuity, which is a kind of insurance, but I basically give a chunk of money. In my example, that would be $200,000. And in the next 3-year period, that money comes back to my spouse as a regular income stream. And that's because his income doesn't count. He doesn't have to spend his income on my care. My income gets paid to the facility. He gets to keep his income, and the Medicaid annuity works. You do not buy the annuity until I'm applying for Medicaid. Okay, you can't buy it in advance. What about the 5-year look back? Remember, Medicaid's going to penalize you for giving away assets. There are some transfers that are accepted. Transfers that were done for purposes other than qualifying for Medicaid can be accepted, but you're at the mercy of the caseworker. And the 5-year look back, it doesn't begin until you submit the application. So if I give away all my assets now, the 5-year look back doesn't start now until it starts when I apply. So if I give them all away now, either outright or in a trust, 5 years from now, I apply for Medicaid. They look back 5 years, these assets are gone. A year from now, they're protected. A year from now, I apply. They look back, they capture all these assets. They're caught in the 5-year look back. Okay. How to protect the family home. There's a fear that the minute you get Medicaid, they're going to grab your house. You do not have to sell your house and use it to pay for your care if you're applying for Medicaid, as long as it's occupied by the applicant or the applicant's spouse. So mom and dad are living in the house, mom goes into the nursing home, the house is protected. The total home equity in the residence has to be less than $595,000. If they've got $1 million house that's paid off, folks, you're going to have to do some creative planning, okay? And you usually have to hold the house in your name. However, we do have some planning tools, like a life estate deed, which is a deed that allows you to keep some rights in the house now and give the house to your children or someone else later down the road. And if you put a life estate deed in place now and you don't need Medicaid for 5 years, then that house can be completely protected from the cost of your care, and Medicaid can't reach it. Because here's the thing. If I'm single and I go from my home into the hospital and then from the hospital into a facility, as long as I check the box on the application that says one day I plan to go home, whether I actually intend to go home or not is different, but I always check the box. My house won't have to be spent down. It won't count as excess resources. But once I qualify for Medicaid and they pay for me at the nursing home for 6 months or more, they can put a lien against my house for all of the care that they've provided, which means it's going to get consumed. The equity in my home will be consumed by this ginormous amount of money that Medicaid is paying for me. So we have planning to accomplish these goals. There's ways to spend down excess assets and protect the family home so that there's something left. How else can you protect assets for your spouse? Well, if you're the spouse with all the income and you go into the nursing home, your income follows you. But Medicaid allows some income to be retained for your spouse if he or she is poor. So some of your income can be carved back. We can use that Medicaid annuity. We can take all the excess assets, buy an annuity that pays back to the spouse that's at home, and protect all of those assets. And then once spouse number 1 is in the facility getting Medicaid, spouse number 2 has all the money back. Now we do some planning for spouse number 2 to make sure they qualify for Medicaid down the road. It's a 2-step process. I know this is complicated. I know there's always questions, but here are the takeaways. It's never too early to start planning for the possibility of a crisis down the road. And it's never too late to protect at least something. So a loved one's in the nursing home and you've been paying $14,000 a month and you hear me and you go, wow, mom's down to $60,000. I wonder if I can protect anything. Probably. You could probably protect some of that and qualify her for Medicaid sooner. Probably not all of it. The sooner you start, the more you can protect, but it's never too late. And most of us would rather see that $30,000 go to our child and have Medicaid pay for us or be used to cover our additional expenses than spend it all. So planning in place, know your assets, think forward into the future. And with that, I think I'm right at my time limit, John, so I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
We have a few questions. We have time certainly for the first one here. The question from the audience is, as a child of aging parents with no plans for long-term care and complete refusal to plan for it, what can we do to relieve that future burden on ourselves?
So the good news is you're never responsible financially for your parents' cost of care unless you agree to assume that liability. So if you're the one admitting them into the nursing home, do not sign off as responsible for their care. But the truth of the matter is you cannot convince some people to preemptively plan. You can tell them horror stories. You can ask them to watch videos and read pamphlets, but there are just some people who won't plan. So from my perspective, keep beating the drum. Convince your parents to put a power of attorney in place. Do everything you can to try to organize assets and learn what you can, and realize that in a crisis, you're going to have to seek help if you're going to step in and try to manage for your family.
Okay, and finally, let's just try to get this last question in. You may have answered it, but maybe a little more detail. Can a nursing home take your house? Is that considered an asset?
Your house is a resource, and all of your resources are available, but your house is considered an exempt resource if you lived in it before you went into the nursing home, you have a spouse who lives in it, or you have a disabled child who lives in it. All right. So no, the nursing home can't take the house. They can't force the house to be liquidated and sold. What the nursing home can do, and it's not really the nursing home, it's Medicaid, but if Medicaid pays for you after 6 months of paying for you, if there isn't a spouse or a disabled child living in your house, then Medicaid can put a lien against the house and get paid back when the house is sold. So they can't force you to sell it, but they can put a lien against it and get reimbursed.
Okay. Thank you once again, Cheryl.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the afternoon.